the Archer, one of the favorites of many a mercenary group, as well as just a really good fire support mech that has so much armor, and if you play with the quirks, it has these battle fists. You can use it as a brawler. So it's like you can literally use it to defend your back line, like your longbows and your LRM carriers, and just the Archer is back there. Is not only is it a LRM boat, it's also a brawler and can protect your other LRM boats. Or in a totally psycho fashion, which is not that psycho at all, you could actually charge out with it as your frontline brawler, even though it's got LRM 20s. The Archer also has some interesting time in the Warrior series books. It faces off against a Warhammer, with the Archer pilot being Steiner, it's actually Kellhounds, and the Kurita pilot being the Warhammer. At the very beginning of the battle, the Archer pilot tells the Warhammer pilot, "I will not kill you." The Warhammer proceeds to attack, firing his PPCs, scoring hits every now and then as the two approach each other, but the Archer has so much armor that it can absorb the blows. Becoming more and more desperate, firing more and more weapons at this seemingly unkillable Archer, the Warhammer continues firing away, not being able to hit once it gets too close, and the Archer just keeps coming. Perhaps the hot terrain had something to do with it, but the Warhammer overheats and shuts down, and because he was defeated without the Archer firing a shot, surrenders and commits ritual seppuku. As one of the older mechs that adorns all kinds of really ancient magazines, the original ARC-1A has only primitive components, so technically it stays good and does not become lost tech all the way from the reunification wars to the Dark Age. So technically you can get this variant anytime. Its main features are 16 tons of primitive armor, which sounds like a lot, but it's primitive, so it's less than what you think it is. It's got 2 LRM 20s with 4 tons of ammo, and medium lasers, just 2 only, so no rear ones. The ARC-2K is a second succession war variant. That is, it starts off, you can get them starting from the second succession war onward out, and it does not become lost tech, so it goes to Dark Age. Basically, it's sort of a downgrade from the earlier versions. Its main features were to switch from LRM 20s to LRM 15s, and getting rid of all the medium lasers, instead adding 2 extra large lasers, 1 in each arm, and 2 extra heat sinks. And this is a favorite of the Kurita forces. The ARC-2R is like the standard production variant. That is not the 1A primitive prototype variant, but the standard production. It goes all the way from reunification wars to the Dark Age, so any era. The ARC-2RB is the royal variant. It went extinct in the First Succession War because some of its components became extinct. It's basically Endosteel case Artemis 4 enhanced ARC-2R. Oh, and it's all doubled on heat sinks, so it's double heat sinks, so it can fire continuously. The ARC-2S is a low-tech variant that came about in the Third Succession War, created by House Steiner. It's also gone from the LRM 20s down to LRM 15s, and it adds 2 SRM 4s on the torsos, with 1 ton of ammo per launcher. so it gets a little more close range capabilities. The ARC-2W is a Wolf's Dragoons late Third Succession War era design. It's similar to the 2S, except instead of dropping from LRM-20 to LRM-15, it got rid of the two rear lasers and also reduced the armor a little bit. The 4M is a early clan invasion variant. It was based on Helm Memory Core upgrades. It's nearly identical to the original RB Royal variant in its loadout. Basically just a recovery of lost tech. The 4M2 is also a early clan invasion era slight tweak from the 4M. Basically, the medium lasers are exchanged for ER versions because the ERs came available a little later. The 5CS was specifically made for Comstar for Tukayyid. It's got XL engines, endo steel, and 2 LRM-15s with Artemis 4. And it's got an little extra armor, 11.5 tons. And the rear firing medium lasers are gone, but the arms carry typical normal medium lasers. The 5R was made for the Ras Al Hag Free Republic. In 3050, it was similar to the 2K a little bit, but it has a endo steel and double heat sinks, but it still has a reduced armor. The 5S is the official Lyran version in 3050, and its main features are the XL engine, which is expensive, but the Lyrans can afford it, so okay. It's also got a medium pulse lasers and streak SRM2s and a NARC. The 5W is the Wolf's Dragoons variant for the 3050 era, and it's got the XL engine and double heat sinks. It still has its LRM-20s, but it's replaced its other gear with an SRM-4 in each arm and a NARC. And it's also got 4 tons of reloads for the LRMs with case. And the Bombardier, that's just a Star League era until the Second Succession War when endo steel became extinct version. It's got an Archer with LRM-20s as an SRM-4, but otherwise it's very similar. It's kind of has too little ammo and heavily ammo dependent, so I don't like it. I've added a large number of assault class and heavy mechs to the sims, so it has increased to 1,052 trials now per mech per data point. However, it has shifted the win fractions down a little bit because generally things tend to lose more to assault mechs. So I've included a couple of Warhammers on the bottom of the screen so you can compare kind of to renormalize the win rates versus when the Warhammer video came out previously. So let's look at the actual simulation combat performance of the various archers. I've included a Bombardier too because it's kind of like the precursor or one of the early archers anyway from the Star League era. And it's not popular enough to be worth putting in its own video, so I'm just going to have it here too. So the first things we see is that the win rate can vary greatly from 69% with the best archer to 49 to 50-ish% with the Bombardier, which basically has too little ammo. The best ones appear to be the 4M and the 4M2, as well as the RB, or the original SLDF Royal unit from the original Star League days. Or if you like mercenaries, you can do the Wolf's Dragoons 5W, which is the future tech version. But this doesn't tell the whole story because The original RB is 1705 battle value, and the 2M variants are both above 1700 battle value, whereas some of the other cheaper variants are only in the 1300 or 1200 range. So battle value wise, they're just not as good a deal, even though they win more often. Now, per ton, of course, they're the best. But per battle value, you might be better off with some of the more primitive variants. Even the 1A is better than the Royal B or those 2M series units. Per C bill, the ones that win the most are mostly the best, except for in the cases where there's XL engines and you get this sudden drop in efficiency because of the cost of the XL. Now, the Archer is one of the original vintage mechs of Battletech, so you'll find it as the original art came from various anime shows. Then this got kind of respun several times as various variants. Now, the good news is that means you can get a 1/72nd model kit for it if you want to try a game of Battle Troops with the 25mm scale figurines, and you can actually get yourself an Archer kit, although it's called a Destroyed Spartan, but I mean, it's basically an Archer. So I decided to go get myself a kit. Now, I had to order this from Japan, and it actually came wrapped in a Japanese newspaper, which is kind of neat. Partly because of Harmony Gold, you can't get this in the US. At least you couldn't several months ago. So I had to get this on eBay and have it shipped from Japan. You can get like the Warhammer longbow, Shadowhawk, Phoenix Hawk, Wasp, Stinger, Locust. You can get them from either Crusher Joe models for the Locust, or you can get these as the Destroyed series from various anime. You can either from Macross for the Destroids, or Dougram for like the Griffin and the Shadowhawk, and a few others. Now, this time lapse of my constructing the model, just as a comment on it, it actually turned out to be, although I made it relatively quickly, I think I only spent like 2 hours total, distributed over several days as I would work a little bit here, a little bit there on it, and let glue dry, etc. It was actually slightly trickier than I expected because it's fully articulated. And there were several times where if you just intuitively build the thing without looking at the instructions, you can get caught up. And at one point I actually had to disassemble one part. You may see it briefly in here as I build something and then kind of take it back apart and then rebuild it. But it was just at one point on one of the legs, on one of the feet, I put one of the segments in at the wrong time, and as a result I got stuck and had to redo it. But it didn't really affect the model or the structure at all. The fingers on the hand are not articulated, but all the other joints are. Like the wrists will rotate, and all the elbows and knees and everything else, and the hips, everything moves around. And there's even the little dual laser turret, and that points rearward. That's supposed to be like an anti-aircraft thing in the original Destroids, but are the two rearward facing medium lasers in the Battletech version. Even those can move around a little bit. And then I got these primer paints, and I used the same techniques I used on minis, except now on this 1/72nd model. Same priming techniques. I tried to use a pre-shadowing technique on it. This is the first time I've done pre-shadowing on this scale. So we'll see how it ends up. So first I just primed it in black. Then I do kind of gray at a 45-degree angle downward like this. See how I'm kind of doing this? Then I let that dry, and then I will do one. So I kind of do it heavily. I'm trying to get shadows into the primer itself. That's kind of the purpose of it. So I'm trying to simulate lighting. And then finally I do white from straight down. And I kind of let that dry. Then there are shadows built into the priming now. I don't know if it'll stay, if it'll be visible through the painting, but I'll try. Because the painting, especially the white, tends to be kind of strong for the whites that I use. So I'll try to go slowly to try to maintain the priming job here. As you can see here, I'm basically using the same techniques I use for minis, except just on a larger scale. I don't know if it'll work. And I'll use these dirty washes to kind of simulate the battlefield smoke. What you're seeing is actually just a scaled up exact duplicate of my typical Steiner paint job. If you look at my Steiner paint videos, this basically is the same thing, just bigger, except I had to do several coats. And I noticed I started kind of washing out the priming because I was doing too many coats, but then I decided to keep it. A little bit of the shadowing is still showing through the paint, but it's mostly covered up. I wasn't really sure how this would come out because, it's not really meant to, you're not really meant to paint at this scale using the same techniques as at 6mm scale. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. But I did not like the way this particular wash came out, so I redid it with Nuln oil. I tried to use a kind of this sepia wash, and I didn't like it. So I ended up redoing with Nuln oil. And then it kind of became more of a classic dirty battlefield look that I liked. And this was the end result. I also made a Hetzer in the same scale, but it's a little bit off because the Hetzer bottle I got was for a smaller 15-ton version.
Also, it was a World War II tracked unit, so it's not quite the same, but it's the closest that you can get. As you can see, I picked these specifically to do the Bow and Norman scenario. And if you've never heard of that scenario, that's okay because it's a Pirate Jump Point original. And the idea is that you can play with just a one-core folded up map on a micro map, possibly just by taking photos with your phone and doing turns with text messages with some remote other player. And the whole purpose of it is basically as an easy introduction to the full combined arms rules, because it's got one mech, one vehicle, and one infantry unit. So you don't have to have a huge game where you're trying to figure out the rules for complicated multiple styles of units. Now, I'm not actually sure quite what I want to do next on this model. It's not done, but I'm not sure what I really want to do next. So if you have any ideas, please post them. I really would like to see if any of them are ideas I want to actually try on here. Clearly the mold lines are much worse than I would like, and I have not put the clear glass parts in yet. So I'll have to take the mold lines out and retouch the paint on those regions. Also, I'm thinking of maybe having a channel giveaway. If I can get to 1,000 subscribers, then whoever helped the most, maybe I'll give them a Archer or something. So maybe the idea is whoever has posted most comments and things and gotten most action from other viewers by replying gets this blue card Archer. Or maybe it'll be the Archer model itself, the big 25mm scale 1/72 Archer. Depending on how the channel goes and how the how you guys post. The main rule is if you post and other people post or thumbs up on your posts and post comments on your posts, that counts as action that you've generated. That'll also help the channel and help us bring us to 1,000 subscribers.